So welcome everybody to this SECEC Education Committee webinar. So tonight we're not going to talk about our results and our surgical techniques. We're going to talk about how AI will impact clinical research, education, and patient care. So we are very fortunate to be joined by an outstanding panel of speakers tonight with Laurent Audige from Switzerland, John Warner and Bill Mallon from the US. I will be hosting this event with Riccardo Ranieri from Milan, who's an active member of the SECEC Junior Committee. And before I hand over to our speakers, I'd like to give a bit of background about why we are all here today and why we're having this discussion and why it is really important. So we are all familiar with the term LLMs, or large language models. And if you do not know about this term, I'm pretty sure you know about ChatGPT, or else you've been maybe living in a cave for the last year. So these language models are complex AI algorithms, and they use deep learning and neural networks. They have been self-trained, but they also have been fed tons of data from human content, and they have been validated by humans as well. So there are trillions of parameters in them, and they're capable of understanding and interpreting complex language, predicting word sequences, and also generating a whole new content. So they have been around, it's not since yesterday, but since the 60s. And then they have dramatically increased their content in the last years. So today we use LLM in basically everything, and ChatGPT has been used in every single field, not only in medicine, but of course there's also some bias. The bias is based on the human content it has been fed with, and also these machines are known to hallucinate, so they can confabulate and totally create some new content to answer some queries. So it's our job to know where to place the cursor. And this is why I would like to welcome our guests and to talk about how we have this new tool and how we need to integrate it in academics. Because if we shut it completely out, we'll certainly miss a train. However, if we let it in without any regulation, we'll going onto a train that is bound to crash. So let's hear tonight about the author's perspective. And I asked Laurent Audige to give his insight about what he thinks we should and how we should use LLMs as authors when we write scientific papers and conduct scientific research. I had the opportunity to work with Laurent on a huge nationwide database of almost 1,000 repaired rotator cuff. And I saw the tremendous amount of work, effort, and data cleaning that needs to be done. And so I think there's definitely a space to improve this with AI. So Laurent works in Basel in Switzerland, and he is the head of the Surgical Outcome Research Center. So Laurent, thanks. I'll give the floor to you soon. And next, we have the immense honor to have Bill Mallon with us tonight. So Bill Mallon has multiple facets. Not only is a keen and expert golfer, a great surgeon, but he's also the editor-in-chief of the Journal of Shoulder and Elbow Surgery. So of course, there is also a need to proofread all the manuscripts he will receive, and how can we make sure that it's not fully AI generated, and can we also use AI finally to review the manuscripts and in publishing articles. And finally, we have also the privilege to have John J.P. Warner from Massachusetts. And John is definitely a key opinion leader. I do not need to introduce him when it comes to technologies and education. So he will maybe give us a broader vision of how AI will affect academics and patient care. So we'd like this session to be as interactive as possible. There's a chat for the audience where you can ask every single question you want to any panelist. So Riccardo will collect all these questions, and then we have time for discussion at the end to exchange about this very important subject. So once again, on behalf of SECEC, I would like to thank you all for being here, especially the speakers. And I let you go ahead with your talk, Laurent.
So thank you very much, Greg. I'm now sharing my slides. I hope it's working well.
perfectly well.
So thank you, Greg, again for your invitation. I was a little bit astonished at the first when you asked me to do that, because I responded to you, but Greg, I've never used AI to write a paper. And then you said, it doesn't matter. What is very important is someone with experience can actually share his opinions and then see and maybe just make some judgment or thought about in the direction where we are going. So this is me as an author. I am clinical epidemiologist. I've been working in veterinary science in the first time step of my career. And then since the year 2000, I am in human medicine, first at the EO Center, working with trauma and of the musculoskeletal system. And then 12 years ago, I went to lead a research group at the Schultes Clinic. And since 2 months, I am full-time at the hospital, University Hospital of Basel, to lead a new surgical outcome research center. I have 215 publications. It's probably not so huge, but I think that when I look at the criteria that are widely recognized to be considered as an author, I think that I'm fairly proud and that I've met most of those, and I can actually assure that I made this responsibility as an author for the accuracy, the integrity, and the originality of the work I've been involved in. Now, what is now going to happen when we consider the AI in this? So these models have been increasingly used for medical writing. I think that if you talk to the younger colleague in particular, they have started to use it. When you look at YouTube video, you think that everyone is going to use it. And I would like to say that this is definitely not a ghost process, but probably more an assistant process. And I'd like to illustrate some of the issues that I've been looking at and what I've experienced. These are the few examples, but they are definitely not limited to this. How you can use ChatGPT if you start to do research, whether you are planning the research or whether you are writing your manuscript, you can. ChatGPT will suggest a book chapter and research article to read on a particular subject. It's going to help you to identify your research gap. It could help you to formulate the research question. Start even to write, to draft an abstract, suggest a manuscript title. You can actually have also in some places even the full grant being proposed. So this is really astonished what you can find and what this technology can do. You can assist in the literature review, discussion, conclusion, and mostly for non-English speaker, improve your readability and the coherence of the manuscript and improve your English before it get to published. Now, Greg mentioned some of the limitations about this technology. It is based on structure and patterns. So basically, ChatGPT is going to, according to what you are going to ask and what the wording is going to being proposed, is going to guess what is the next word to be presented. So it's more based on structure and pattern than the actual understanding of words as we do as human. First, the second thing is that it is limited to being trained with a huge amount of data, which is up to 2021. So basically, everything which is recent may not be identified and will not be identified by this technology. Greg mentioned about this hallucination that ChatGPT can do things, and basically it does. He is able to lie in a very good manner. It's incredible how it is presented, but if you are not careful, the information it gives you can be incorrect, incomplete, and also biased. And he may not provide the source of the information it gives you, so maybe there is some ways how to find the source and how you can trust what is being proposed. So basically, look at ChatGPT. There is different ways. Basically, it's very important if you are using it. You have to learn to use it. And I'm one of those now potential users trying to improve the way I'm using it. It's free to use. The version 4 seems to be the one to use. It's much more powerful. And for that, I've been trying the technology with Bing, the search mechanism, because under ChatGPT, the version 4 is still not free of use. So there is a way to use that. In particular, that Bing is said to access the internet, so it should be more up to date with the information it's going to provide us. Now, you have to formulate good prompts, basic on which role, action. You have to give it an action, a task to perform, to suggest the format, to write in which tone it has to be presented. I would say here scientific. Incredibly, you have to tell in what is the audience you are targeting. A scientist, you could be patient. So I thought immediately you could just formulate text to be presented to patient, or even five-year-old children if the understanding is really at the lower level to be organized. Now we have to find out the sources of the information that ChatGPT is giving us, because as a scientist we do need to have and to substantiate what we write and the evidence we bring. Creative mode, improve that, and then you can iterate the output of the techniques and this technology, edit, correct ChatGPT, resubmit, and so on. And for this, you can actually improve. Let me give you some of the examples I've tried. Identify a research gap. So I've done some research on rotator cuff repair. So you are a surgeon, orthopedic surgeon. Can you suggest a research gap on the topic of rotator cuff repair? This is the output. And those that are familiar with the topic will recognize some of the topics that are being proposed. The effect of patch augmentation on the healing of large and massive tear, very much on target. Timing and protocol of rehabilitation. Stem cells and other biological agents to enhance the cuff healing. And then the fourth one, which is probably more of my topic, outcome research, the long-term outcome and complication of repair in elderly patients, and the factor influencing their satisfaction and quality of life. So, wow. So this is really amazing what ChatGPT here told us. So I thought, okay, let's move on. I take the fourth one. And you can look at the reference, check out that they are actually up to date, and then move to the next process where you are going to say, let's start a literature review. And I said, I am a clinical researcher interested in conducting a project on the following topic. I give this fourth topic, which are the most recent literature that I should read. This gives me 4 articles. I had to re-ask because it was not presented with all details. But most of these articles are very on target. They may not all come from peer-reviewed journals, so you have to be careful. But that's a great point to start. Saying that, you have to recognize that ChatGPT definitely not a search engine, so you don't do a systematic review the same way. So to look for reference, and then it is well known that some of the cited reference are fake. So it will give you, if you ask for reference, it might give you some reference, but you have to make sure that they exist. So in that case, I went on the internet and the links are provided, and they were actually real. Then I went on to write an introduction with literature review, and I want to ChatGPT to draft me 3 short paragraphs on the topic and formulate the research question. It did the job, I would say, fairly well, but limited to 3 references, so it's not a lot given the amount of publication that were done. They were all up to 2021, and then mostly the formulation of the clinical questions were completely out of focus. So it was not the topic. So I told ChatGPT that's not correct. This is not the topic I was interested in. So please reformulate, and then it does reformulate it, maybe not completely exactly what I would like to have, but you need to interact with ChatGPT so that you get a better output. So that was good. Then I was intrigued by the option to find a good title for my manuscript, and I took one of our publication. It was a predictive model for shoulder stiffness, and I said, based on this summary, can you suggest me a title for my manuscript? And these are the titles that were presented. The first one mentioned an issue of case control study, which was not really the case. The second one about validation, but is only part validation, but the next two titles were very much full on target. And if I was really blocked and in need for some inspiration, I think that would be a very good way to go. The other task I gave ChatGPT is to consider my abstract, which is too long, and imagine that I want to submit this to a journal requiring the abstract to be only 250 words. Then I will ask ChatGPT to just reduce it, as well as the number of keywords, and it is absolutely astonishing what the output was. Absolutely, I could potentially take it just one-to-one and not change anything. And as the expert in my paper, I would say I would not have done better. So this from 312 words, it was reduced a little bit more to 184 words, and I had exactly 5 keywords. So it's a wow effect, I would say, from this aspect. Some of the output I had to correct, so I had to bring my expertise also in order to judge if the output were correct or not. So this is absolutely essential that we have to consider that. Nowadays, there is a multiplicity of AI tools for research which is being proposed. I just put here some examples. I by no way make any advertisement on them, but some of them are very, very powerful to help us write and to be an assistant for publication and to perform research, and in particular in the field of references. So where do we put the cursor? This is a good question, Greg. You said at the beginning, should I answer that? In one aspect of the, one side of the spectrum, I am here with my first publication until now, 0% AI contribution. And basically, I'm very happy with that. We survived quite well to do that. Now, talking to young colleagues, I realize that some of them probably dream to be at the other side of the spectrum, 100% AI. I just ask ChatGPT to write me a paper and I just submit as it is. That, for sure, is cheating, and it should be absolutely not allowed. Now, on that spectrum, there is different tasks that we may consider. So from one aspect is English editing. You can do a literature review, recommend the reading, or even start to draft and help you to write. Now, the question is where we put the cursor. Some of the editor might say that is allowed to look at your English, in particular if you are not in the field. Others might say, no, recommended reading. I can actually do my review. It's really helpful. It's a boring task. I would like to have support. And then some that have difficulties to write will benefit from some help at the beginning. What is acceptable and what is not, it's just open for discussion. Honestly, as an experienced researcher, I will definitely try to get the help in all of these tasks, but basically make sure and be extremely careful about what is being published, reword the way I do it. But some of the initial tasks, the first step in doing that might be actually done under the help of the AI. I believe many of us, and in particular the young generation, are taking this technology pretty much. So to summarize, I think that AI can be used as medical writing assistant, at least from a source of inspiration to guide us in which direction we should read and how we can approach our research. It should never be taken, submitted as received. You are the author and not AI. AI is not, it's a tool, it's not an author. Now you have to check everything, the text as well as the content and the source, and then acknowledge if you use AI. I think that it's like any tool we use. I think that it would be fair and honest to tell what are the steps have been done under which circumstances. Now, to the question, will large language model affect scientific writing in the future? I think definitely yes. I think that we cannot stop that change. How much, I cannot tell you. Will I use it in the future and help my students? I think that's yes, very likely. I think that we have to explore ways to do that, but remain honest about what we do And as a senior researcher, my young colleagues doing PhDs, they are going to use it. So if I don't come a little bit with them, I may not make sure that we do that in a proper way. So to be useful, you have to learn about it. You have to keep aware about what exists and learn to use it properly. So my question, so this is a little bit of my answer now. My question to you, and what about you? What do you think? Do you have some of the auditor now participating? Did you use it for your own paper? I think that's the question will come to me, but I think that would like to hear also from you if you use it and if it was useful. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Laurent. I think it's a very good question to ask maybe the panel who uses ChatGPT or a similar large language model on their daily basis. Bill, John, Ricardo, is this something you use in your current practice?
I have not used it to write anything. I see stuff written in it all the time, and I've played with it a little online. I don't think as much as Laurent has. My main concerns about it are almost that last slide of Laurent's about where the cursor is on the articles that are submitted.
So I actually will show, I used it to some degree for this presentation I'm going to give. Of course, that's not authoring anything original. It's just helping me with a presentation. But most of my experience, as I'll explain to you, is using AI as a tool in patient care, which I think begs the issue of, the question of honesty, integrity, cheating, etc., because AI can be an augmentation of what we do as physicians and surgeons. That's really what I'll focus on.
And maybe we can ask also the audience, if you can just write in the chat, if you use ChatGPT or similar tools in your daily practice. I use it for my medical reports. I have it proofread by ChatGPT. It's quite useful. Sometimes to just proof the writing of my own manuscripts, although I do not alter the wording exactly, just to have a little grammatical check. But my question for you, Laurent, is you said that if it's 100% generated by AI, it's cheating. But could we imagine, for instance, and this is an open question to everybody, that if we write a meta-analysis, which is, well, if we let it being written by AI, is that acceptable, since we're not reinventing the wheel and we're just processing data?
Well, that's a good question, Greg. I would say today, I don't think that the technology can write a paper 100%. I've never seen that, but I believe it's probably not so well developed. But the way it is progressing at such a pace that I think that very soon we will have tools that are going to produce a product that is going to look like a paper. I'm not saying that it's going to be correct, accurate, or unbiased, but it's going to look like a very nice paper. So the question is how you identify that, and how you avoid people to submit that and pretend that they have done that themselves. Now, doing a meta-analysis, then we could imagine that there is effectively machine learning that are automatically updating, that's just surveying the web on papers that are published on a particular topic, identify the type of journals, extract the data, and then do the analysis automatically. Why not? I mean, these are routine tasks. There is effectively a methodology which is known. If someone is programming this and can actually guarantee that this is done according to the standards, then the output, I mean, this meta-analysis, forest plot, and so on, they will look the same as if someone was doing that per hand. So if that is being proven that it is correct. Now there is still the discussion, there is still the interpretation of the results that needs to be done and needs to be corrected and approved. So I think that's a step that is going to be, it has to be validated by a human to my opinion, before it's released. But the tool that may be developed will be so advanced that we cannot exclude that 80% of the job is going to be done by a machine.
Yeah, I think going 100% right now is probably not the way to go. You have to edit it yourself because of what Laurent mentioned, these hallucinations that we've all learned about. But I bet in 5 years, this is getting better every day. And in 5 years, it may be good enough that we don't need to worry about it. One thing, I think this is going to put medical editing services out of business, because I always feel sorry as a journal editor for speakers when they submit, and I can tell they have troubles with English. I speak some French, but I could not write an article in French. This isn't a problem for Laurent, Ricardo, and Greg. They speak English very well. I think they're better actually than JP. But I think ChatGPT can definitely be used for editing grammar and syntax and all that, at least right now.
Fully agree. So I see there's a lot of questions being asked in the chat. That's perfect. We're going to keep them and serve them for the discussion. So I propose we move on to Bill, because I think Laurent perfectly passed the témoin. And Bill, you can go forth with your presentation.
Okay, there's a question on the webinar chat that I'm going to answer in my presentation, so hopefully I'll get that. Let's see, here we are. Okay, thanks very much for having me. I've been asked to talk about how AI will impact orthopedic journals. My disclosures really are just that I do receive a salary as the editor of Journal of Shoulder and Elbow Surgery, but nothing else. Just a little background, AI or artificial intelligence has a bunch of different guises. AI, then machine learning neural networks, which try to imitate the way neurons work in the brain. They're really just all subsets of AI. As Laurent mentioned, they use algorithms, and they're different algorithms depending on how you do it. There's other subsets such as generative AI. And the computer basically learns by studying a training data set that it's given, and it's only as good as that training data set. However, again, Laurent mentioned the data set that they're using right now is huge. It's up to 2021. And the current definition of AI is it's a theory and development of machines and computer systems to perform tasks that are either require or mimic human intelligence. It really first was developed by Alan Turing, famous British mathematician and computer scientist. He was the subject of The Imitation Game, and he's considered the father of AI. His seminal paper on this was Computing Machinery and Intelligence. It's often termed Can Machines Think? But the term wasn't coined until 1955 by John McCarthy, who defined it as the science and engineer of making intelligent machines. And here's Turing's paper. You can see here he subtitled The Imitation Game, which became the movie that came out with Benedict Cumberbatch a few years ago. And right in the first paragraph, he asked the question, can machines think, which he tried to answer in the article. So it's really become prominent with ChatGPT, as Laurent mentioned, and that's been upgraded to ChatGPT 4.0, which again is not free yet, but I think it'll come out there. ChatGPT is powerful enough to pass the U.S. medical license examination. It actually did that. And it allows the system to solve problems, write papers, articles, and find solutions to answers that would take researchers months to years sometimes. The concern people talk about is, could this become a threat to the human race if it becomes so powerful? And I understand that threat. I think that's more like a Y2K problem that we're all worried about for about 5 years before it. I don't think it will actually become a threat, but some people think it will. So can it write orthopedic articles? It definitely can do it. And Laurent showed you some of that. ChatGPT has done that. The biggest problem it has right now is a lot of the references are completely wrong or even made up. They're called hallucinations, as mentioned. To the layperson, these articles look very good, but to an expert in the field, they usually a lot of errors or omissions. And there are getting to be ways to detect these that I'll talk about a little bit more in a second. there's some certain phrases that it uses that will occur several times within the article. And if you see that several times, you can guarantee that this has been written by AI. But I don't think that'll continue. I think in 5 years, it's those hallucinations will be at least being minimized or almost going away. It's guaranteed to get better. Our therapy this year had an article submitted in which one of the authors was listed as ChatGPT, and they didn't allow that. But this stimulated Jim Lubowitz and his co-editors to write an editorial about the journal's policy towards GPT as an author. And JBJS and our journal, JSES, followed shortly with editorials of our own. And ours is down here on the right, Artificial Intelligence and the Creation of Scientific Papers. The International Conference on Machine Learning announced a policy in regard to this, which raised big questions like, how do we define an author? Is ChatGPT an author? Or where does the use of ChatGPT get so powerful? Where on that cursor Laurent mentioned does it become an author, or where are you just using it for support? And where do you draw the line between writing and editing? We don't really know the answers to these. And basically, Greg, JP, and Laurent, I'm going to ask a lot more questions than I can provide answers today, because that's sort of the status of where we are. Right now, our own editorial policy at JSES is it cannot be listed as an author or a co-author of an article. You can only use it to improve the readability and language of the submission, but not to replace key research tasks. And actually, I think, especially going forward, we will allow it more and more to replace key research tasks. Some of the meta-analysis things and forest and things that were mentioned, but it should only be used with researcher oversight. You need to check these again because of hallucinations on the references. And any use of AI in the production of the article must be disclosed at the time of submission, which is the problem. I mean, how do we know that? Have we had articles submitted that have been written by AI or in which the authors used AI to assist them in the writing? I have no idea. How do we know that? It's a problem. And right now, we can't answer that question. However, the main medical publishers, Elsevier, Wolters Kluwer, Lippincott, Williams Wilkins, Sage, and Springer, have now formed a consortium to develop algorithms to help us tell when something is written by AI. Again, by looking at hallucinations in the references, by looking at common phrases the article contains that shouldn't be there multiple times and things like that. But I'm sure things can slip by. And right now, they don't have those algorithms. They're still just working on it. So for now, we're in the dark on that. But right now, and I think JP will talk more about this, in medicine itself, AI is primarily used to make diagnoses and to offer prognoses on those diagnoses with what are called clinical decision support tools, or CTSD. Making the diagnoses have been shown to be fairly effective in radiology and pathology. There's been other specialties tried it. They're not as successful as radiology and pathology, but I think it's going to really change those specialties. I think it wouldn't surprise me to see fewer and fewer medical students going into those fields just because AI is going to take over some of that. I think radiologists will end up being mostly interventional radiologists rather than just reading the x-rays. The prognoses or the clinical decision support tools can be used to guide the patient to have a diagnosis. And again, I think JP will address it, but it'll tell you, okay, I've got a 70-year-old who's diabetic and has hypertension. What are his chances to have an infection after a total shoulder replacement? It'll spit out that's 3.7%. And you can use that to help, guide the patient and inform him about what his odds are. And a 50-year-old perfectly healthy, it may say it's a 0.6%. And again, the numbers that we could get right now, I think, but it would take a lot of work for us. And ChatGPT could spit that out for you very quickly. So we're getting journal articles all the time using AI to study clinical questions. We're getting them, and they can be a problem for a couple of reasons. The authors typically feed AI a data set, a training data set that they get usually from the large databases out there, Pearl Diver is a big one. NISQIP in the US, National Surgical Quality Improvement Program, and Sparks, which is the New York State database. But they also use registries. There's registries in a lot of European countries, in Australia, the US now has them as well. And they use these to come up with a conclusion on either the risk factors or the prognosis. And they go from point A to point B, again, a little bit like Laurent's cursor, but in a different use here. But we really have no idea how they traveled that road from A to B. And that leaves us with a lot of questions about it. So the main problems we have with the articles that we're receiving is, one, I can't find anybody to review them, or it's always hard to get reviewers, but you know, we're looking at using something like this dog up in the upper right corner to review the thing, because so few people know about this. The dog might know as much as a lot of us do. The other thing is, because traveling from A to B is unknown, it's kind of like the authors are saying, here's the question and boom, here's the answer. And nobody knows how they got from A to B. It's like a math proof, but you skip the proof. It's like these mathematicians here with all the equations on the left side of the board, the right side of the board, in the middle, they just write, then a miracle occurs. And that miracle now is ChatGPT, which takes you from here to here, but we don't really know how it got there. So again, at this time, we got a lot more questions than we have answers. We don't know exactly how authors can use AI, although Laurent brought up a lot of ideas about that. We don't know exactly how to detect authors that are using AI to write their articles for them. We have some suspicions when the references are wrong, but we can't check every reference in every article. We receive so many articles with so many references. And again, can AI be used to help patients? I think it can definitely, and JP will talk about that. I think it's very good for prognoses. I think it's good for diagnoses in some specialties. And I think in those specialties, it'll replace some doctors. And that may be a good thing. It may help by doing some tasks and freeing up the workforce to do other things we need them for. So again, I have more questions than I have answers. I'm sorry about that. But again, I know it's for SECEC, so thank you. Merci, gracias, grazie. And I actually barely know the other languages, but thank you very much.
Thanks a lot, Bill. I think you provided us a lot of answers already, even if you don't think you have. So my question to you is, do you think that there will still be a need for scientific journals in the future if we have a very powerful machine which can just solve a query if we prompt it properly and just give us answers straight away? Because as you know, you have to submit the manuscript, it has to be reviewed, and then it has to be edited, published, and it can take months and months. Maybe not with JSES, of course. But
Yeah, right.
Could we just imagine in the future that we have not a journal, but a huge chatbot which can interact with us and just give us answers to any kind of questions?
That's a great question. I hadn't really considered it, but I think it's possible. I think it's a ways down the road yet. You know, the big thing right now is more and more scientists and authors are pushing everything to be open access. In Europe, especially, they've pushed Program S, I think it is, or that's not quite the right term, but it's the program where they want everything to be an open access journal. And I think AI will help that because you can publish more and more with AI or ChatGPT or things like that, or Bard. And I could conceivably see 10, maybe 20. Laurent, what do you think in the future? You might not need scientific journals.
Just one huge online journal where you can select everything. It's difficult to say, but there will be a big fight about who is going to manage that.
You know, Bill, maybe it's the case that it can solve your reviewer problem if you train ChatGPT to be a better reviewer.
Yeah, I thought about that. I think it's a long way from being able to review things yet. But again, these things improve so quickly with the data sets they get. I could see in the future that it could review articles for us.
Are you aware, Bill, about this application? I think it's Penelope.ai that can review your manuscript and tell you if it meets the requirement of the journal. So it's a new application apparently, and they
Yeah.
try to. It's a startup offering the services to authors as well as a journal editor.
Yeah, I've heard about that. But there's also, medical editing services that will do that for you. Although they charge you a fee for it. So there are ways around it. I've even thought that when I step down as editor, that would be something to do on the side, because I've spent so many years as editor now. I sort of know what we need to do to have an article buffed up so it's the type of thing that the editors will accept.
I have a question, if I may.
Sure.
Yeah. As an editor, do you have like a trial task force, we can say, for who is using AI for reviewing articles? Maybe can simplify like all the process, and I don't know, maybe can help you, not us, like as an editor, not as an editor.
We haven't used it yet, and I haven't really. I would probably have to get it from Elsevier, which is our publisher, or the other journals would get it from their publishers to see if it's approved to use it. I think that's still so much in the learning stage. I'd like to see it tested before we use it for the actual reviews of the articles.
Thank you.
And there was a question from Karen Bilsel on the chats, and this was actually a question also to you, Bill. I've been looking around I've been reviewing an article recently, and it seems a bit suspicious. So I went online and I checked different programs to proofread it. Was it generated by AI? And there was a multitude of different answers. Some said no, some said yes, 27%, others 45%, then completely. So are you aware of any software, or do you use, Elsevier has proposed you to use any software to proof content for AI?
We don't currently use anything to review content for AI. Elsevier, as I mentioned, is working on that for us. We use a thing called Authenticate, which uses the cross-check algorithm, and every article that's submitted goes through Authenticate for us, and that looks for duplicate publication or plagiarism. Has this been published before? It does not yet look for whether or not they used AI. Right now, the only way we could tell would be to look at all the references, to look for hallucinations, and to look through the manuscript for common terms that keep showing up that AI puts in there sometimes, again, as sort of hallucinations.
Great. So I think we move on to John's talk. John will give us maybe a more enlarged vision about the future. John, please.
Sure, let me share. And then you tell me, can you see my screen?
Perfectly well.
Okay. So I'm going to take a different tact. And I think that, well, I mean, AI is a huge area. And I do this with a fair amount of humility because, as I'll show you in a moment, I'm nowhere near an expert in this. I just hang around really smart people from time to time. So I want to look at this from the standpoint of patient care and consider the value chain of service we deliver when we take care of a patient, a surgical patient, the decision-making, the execution, the aftercare, et cetera. Much of this is possibility, and some of it is reality, as you'll see. And AI has been around for quite some time all around us. I have a lot of conflicts of interest, principally reflecting the fact that I work with industry on some things here. One of my companies was bought by Stryker, and I'll feature some of the things from it, but please be advised that there's a conflict of interest and perhaps a conflict of bias that I have in this process. Now, again, I'm humble in talking about this, and I like this expression, respect old doctors, they passed medical school without Google, let alone AI. And when I started, it was not even hardly an analog world. I mean, I used a slide rule for inorganic chemistry. And I was lucky enough recently to go to a world forum on AI and digital healthcare in Saudi Arabia, where I met people from all over the world outside of orthopedics, applying AI to many, many different areas. And as we become specialists, we fail to have a broad enough view to understand how we can use things working well elsewhere in what we do. So simply put, AI is a study of how to make computers do things which at the moment people are better. Frankly, that was written a while ago by Jean Chaoui, who was the scientific brain behind a digital healthcare product I'm going to show in a moment. All of these companies are working, and many, many others that are not listed here, to either acquire the really bright ones or to develop internally. And that's nothing new to any of you. And it's been said that artificial intelligence really is the fourth revolution after information technology and before it electricity and steam power. And Hollywood has been celebrating AI for quite some time now. And there are more movies and stories about it than I can put up here, but just to show a few that may resonate. And there's really a lot of publication coming out now. Some of these are really interesting books that presage what may be our future. Even in business review now, AI is going to be a major driver in all forms of business outside of healthcare, frankly, as well as in healthcare. And I think somebody alluded to concerns for superintelligence, eliminating the need for the human race. And this book talks about that. And it remains to be seen whether or not the alarmism is really relevant. Now, if we look at the range from narrow to superintelligence, the green dot there probably represents where we want to be, and that is computers working as an amplification of individual physicians, surgeons, being something that expands your capability to take care of patients, not necessarily substituting for what you do. And to be fair, the FDA will probably not approve anything that isn't ultimately oversighted by a human being. We were talking about this, but if you look, and these are even later references, look at the articles on AI, original research and editorial in all areas, and then look in orthopedics. And this was in 2021, and maybe more now. Spine has really dominated. Shoulders really been quite minimal, to be fair, and that's my area of expertise. That is most certainly going to change in the future. But this isn't ChatGPT writing papers. This is AI embedded in the care processes, looking at what value it creates from a business point of view and a patient safety point of view, which is one of the most important things. I think AI provides the opportunity to improve on safety of what we do. This is a review that describes systemic reviews in AI and medical publications. You can see how this is an exponential growth and very difficult to keep up with. And to be fair, the number of publications has increased steeply, and it's going even faster now. And AI has beaten Moore's law, which for most of you, if you remember, that's about 18 months to double computer power. Well, we're much faster than that with AI. And so anticipating, Bill, how this will affect the journal or even our care is very difficult when the future moves so quickly in front of you. And so let me just share with you a little bit of what ChatGPT thinks. If you ask ChatGPT, what's the future of AI in healthcare? These are all the things you probably already know. And many of these will be challenging from the standpoint of regulatory, like telemedicine and virtual assistants, administratively automating tasks. But what about when we make errors with medications and with decision-making? Predictive analytics is really questionable at the current time. AI has historically been terrible in apps like dating services. But it will insinuate itself into many of these areas and potentially figure into improved equity of care for all patients, because it can look at the disparities in distribution of care and equity and then make some conclusions about that. Now, the dangers of AI we've talked about briefly: misdiagnosis, inaccuracies, over-reliance on AI, data privacy concerns, biases, lack of explainability. It comes to conclusions that really are black boxes. And how do we use that clinically? That's a real ethical issue. As I said, regulatory, legal challenges. The economics are probably very favorable if we reduce the work effort here. And then, of course, the bottom line is clinical adoption and trust. So how is it being used currently? And I'll just briefly go through these, but just summarize them. And this is what ChatGPT told me. Well, image analysis has long been here. And I think radiologists may have some concern about their future in terms of playing this role, because we know now that pattern recognition with AI exceeds that of the human eye in speed and in accuracy. That's already here. Robotic-assisted surgery, well, AI's insinuated itself into that. Predictive analysis is coming, and I'll briefly comment on that. It's already the case that it can be functioning through wearable devices for assessment of rehab and post-operative monitoring. you know, we spend a lot of time managing our patients that can be oversighted through AI algorithms. It remains to be figured out how that gets through regulatory, but that could be a major cost saver when it helps us understand who needs therapy and who doesn't need therapy. Patient management, of course, chatbots have already been found in prospective randomized study to be viewed by patients as more empathetic than humans who become tired and irritable. So that's a real advantage. And then training and education, you know, how do we measure the skill sets of surgeons and how can AI help us with our training tools? Clinical decision support we've talked about, 3D printing and custom implants, I'll show you an example, and data collection and research, which can help us with these processes. Now, Jean Chui is a guy that most of you probably don't know. He is the Vice President of Digital Robotics and Enabling Technologies at Stryker. And the reason I know him is because we worked together in a company that was acquired by Stryker. And when I asked him simple questions here, this is not ChatGPT answering, will AI become part of the value chain in arthroplasty? Will it help us as arthroplasty surgeons, be you hip surgeons, shoulder surgeons, whatever? That's a top priority for industry, at least this particular industry. What problems will there be with AI? Well, of course, we already commented, flawed decision-making and human bias incorporated into the algorithms. It can provide fake content. Well, we don't want to make decisions on patient care based on fake content. And then what about current prediction models? And the problem is, while they may be published as such, they have yet to be validated through same studies done by others without conflicts of interest. And so some of these are being used for value proposition for business models that really haven't been tested by alternatives. Now, I'm very interested in the business of healthcare, and I went to Harvard Business School, and Michael Porter, some of you may know, is the champion of value-based healthcare. He pointed out that augmented reality has disrupted the industry processes, and it reduces errors and increased productivity. And I can tell you that you could insert AI and machine learning where augmented reality appears here. This was a whole journal publication of Harvard Business Review. Now, just for example, how AR creates value and just substitute AI. AR becomes part of the product. It becomes part of the value chain. We don't even think about it. We use our iPhone. There's AI in that. We use Amazon. There's AI in that. We've been doing this for some time. It's only a matter of time before it becomes automatic in what we deliver as physicians. So think about this for a minute. How about if we considered the episode of care in any orthopedic procedure that we do in the context of digital possibilities, pre-op planning, intraoperative execution, and aftercare? And I would suggest to you that AI will dramatically disrupt and improve this process at all levels, be it in the preoperative planning and prediction, or in the guidance during surgery, or frankly, in the oversight after the care through wearable technology, or through simply observation of information patients put in for their recovery curve processes to identify outliers who should be having either more therapy or be connected with sooner. And thus we will miss less problems with our patients. Very important area for my way of thinking is, will this help us avoid errors? Humans make errors. Can AI oversight what we do at all levels here and improve our precision, reduce manpower needs, improve our decision-making, create cost benefits, et cetera, et cetera? Anything you can think of, AI algorithms can be created that will ultimately probably provide value here in a way that will be very important to a healthcare system that is, in the United States, at the breaking point right now in terms of cost. So let me show you briefly a video which shows some of this in its application to shoulder arthroplasty. Now, when I do shoulder arthroplasty, and many of us use planning tools, I use this particular program. It can select if you select the diagnosis and put in certain information, AI will predict for you the likelihood of one procedure being better than another. It gives a range. It doesn't give an absolute number. AI in the future will be able to look at the soft tissue around the shoulder joint and analyze the compliance because of fatty atrophy and make suggestions about whether or not the subscapularis is at risk for failure if you do something, or whether or not you will be able to achieve the geometry that you're trying to create with a reverse replacement. These are things that are being worked on now, and AI certainly will be able to oversight video analysis of patients and measure range of motion, and then put that into an observation and an analysis of the progress of a patient. These are all very relevant tools that will unburden physicians and make our patients feel much better about what they're going through. Now, if you look here, here's an example of a patient who's going to have a shoulder replacement. Probability of experts that it would be anatomical is 78%. And AI will auto-plan the optimum positioning of components according to the specifications that are defaulted to by the surgeon or their own specifications. So the surgeon is creating the range of what's acceptable. AI is just delivering what the surgeon wants. And this is a major time saving for those who believe that it's of value to do preoperative planning. Ultimately, this could lead to lower need of inventory, reducing cost of goods, actually creating case-specific kitting, kind of like the conformist model, if you will, that reduce cost of inventory. And so you also are given a variety of options available, and you decide which of these you would select. And this is all AI algorithm. And this is currently limited user release now, but will be released to the greater market, and others will follow with their versions of this. It's not as if one company will own this particular approach. It'll become really in my opinion, the state of the art, and it will prevent errors in planning. Certainly, we wouldn't want to put something in the wrong orientation because we didn't plan it properly. So if you go a little further here, this demonstrates how, and this now is going to be available, patient-specific implants. So AI algorithms using CT 3D modeling can create customized implants both in primary and in revision settings that are really very accurate and very quick to do. And while this, as you watch it, is somewhat manual, it will automate computation of the augment and its positioning and etc. And once soft tissue is added to this, the potential for being able to do this geometry and the forces that you create across the joint will be also assessed by AI. And again, this will have to be validated with clinical experience, but nonetheless, it will dramatically improve the accuracy of what we do. I'm going to go past this a little to the next. It will also help us in subtraction of metal so that we can look at what's left to work with and what kind of grafts we might need. This is on the horizon and very soon going to be coming to the market. And I want to just quote Niels Bohr, who is known as the father of the atom. He said, prediction is very difficult, especially if it's about the future. There is an economic to machine learning. Machine learning can create significant value in terms of unburdening us from the errors we would otherwise make and the inventory we would otherwise need that we can avoid. This particular paper, and there have been a series of these papers published in Journal Shoulder Elbow, and Bill probably know these very well, is a predictive model for machine learning in terms of predicting the patient's likelihood of a complication with any given approach. Now, this has to be validated with similar studies done by other groups, but it's here, and it's going to definitely improve things. Now, most of us don't think about what happens after surgery. These are all companies that are using or trying to use surveillance and AI to manage the post-acute care period in terms of cost and use of resources. And all of them have a similar value proposition. Some are larger than others, but this is really going to be the future. So, this article here talked about value opportunities in orthopedics, and Kevin Bozic, who is well known for his interest in this area, was one of the lead authors here. Improving patient experience, access to care, better diagnoses, better outcomes, everything I've been talking about. This is a uniform view of the future that's very optimistic. Now, I want to get to the end of this by quoting Sam Altman, who said, our mission is to ensure that artificial intelligence, AI systems that are generally smarter than humans benefits humanity. The principles are that artificial general intelligence must be an amplifier of humanity, and we must maximize the good and minimize the bad. All benefits of artificial general intelligence must be widely shared, and we must proceed cautiously to minimize risks. This isn't just about scientific papers. It's about, do we make decisions based on what AI tells us we should do? It was Steve Jobs who said, everyone here has a sense that right now is one of those moments when we are influencing the future. And he would be very accurate in that statement when we consider AI. And I'd conclude just by saying that the vision that we are now having will become very automatic for the digital natives that are the next generation, and in fact, the current generation Z. Thank you.
Thanks a lot, John. This is, you use the word unburdening, and I think this is actually exactly right. I think we cannot compete with the intellectual quotient of the machine, but the emotional quotient is still ours for the moment. And for me, this unburdening is really important if we can get rid of all these, clinical measurements, all these data collections, and spend more time actually chatting with the patient in our consultation. This is something I really look forward to in the future, maybe. Any questions from the panel?
If I can bring like my young perspective, during my last years, I did some fellowship, and I have to say that the most important things that I learned during this experience was the clinical practice of the senior guys. And this is not the danger of producing the skilled clinical practitioners in the future. If we just we are focusing only of this software, AI, because basically it's my generation, and sometimes I feel really confused in approaching my clinical practice and compare me with other guys with softwares and everything. It's I think for us it will be very, very, very difficult. What's your opinion about it?
Well, I didn't talk about it here, but I think that everybody goes through learning curves throughout their career. The learning curves, to be fair, are problematic for patients, because you want to be on the right side when we're very skilled, not on the left side when we're learning. I think that AI and other digital tools are going to help shorten learning curves and reduce the side effects for our patients, or the problems for our patients, and our own problems with decision making and then executing what we do. That remains to be seen, but I think, Bill, you're going to be seeing some of these kinds of studies alleging or trying to show that we create safer approaches for our patients, because we more quickly help less experienced surgeons become more experienced through AI oversight, through AI tools. And that's a very lofty goal, reducing errors, but I think it's very real.
I think also for surgeons with low case numbers, it would be more interesting for them to use these kind of machines and diminish the number of errors they produce. So maybe not in the US, but in Switzerland, maybe a bit less population to treat, and some patients, we know that now there are minimal numbers of cases you have to do and be able to practice. And maybe this could be an option to minimize the risks and errors.
Hey, Greg, you'd mentioned unburdening the doctors, for more patient care. One thing that's burdened us in the US, and I think in Europe too, within the last 20 years or so, are EMRs, which sort of detract from our, doctor-patient relationship when we're seeing them. I actually think AI, and even before full AI, Google algorithms are going to make EMRs go away. And everyone says, well, we use the EMRs so we get structured data. But, Google's algorithm can search for things just from, prose, and pulled structured data out of it. JP, you can maybe comment on this, but I'm sure that just by almost dictating again, that AI can pull the data out of our, doctor-patient encounter to get structured data out of that.
Well, that AI is, I don't know if this is what you mean, but AI can participate as a listening tool while we interact with our patients and write the note in the background. Exactly. While we move forward. In fact, it can pull out the relevant labs that support our conclusions, so we don't have to hunt for them. And when you're done, you literally look at it, you edit it, and it's done. So that's an enormous advantage for connecting to patients, showing empathy and listening, being an active listener. And then AI listens to everything and builds the if you will, builds the the diagnosis and the plan and etc. And it's up to you to agree to it or not. And that will be a big time saver. Plus, it may be more accurate than what we would do otherwise.
John, do you use this kind of software already?
No, not well, not yet. But I work in a large academic medical center, which large academic medical centers, by and large, are late adopters of new innovations, and so these things are coming. My institution, I think, spent $2 billion on installing Epic. It took years to do that. There are major concerns as to regulatory and safety for embedding other things into Epic or trying to help us. They're not going to rebuild the entire system. And, Bill, if you say take over LMR, oh my God, after $2 billion investment, I don't think they want to do that. But there may be add-ons and things that amplify. And probably what will happen in the future is the Epic organization will buy some of these startups and embed them into the next generation of Epic that they offer so that it becomes part of the service. That takes a while, but that's, I think, how these things will be scaled in adoption across the larger market.
I think one concern we all have is that all these little companies and structures are being bought by bigger companies and biggers. And then who will finally be in control of all that? If the government, tries to put a hand on it, or insurance companies. So are there any laws or any discussions in the US, for instance, to regulate that?
I think it's very clear that, the HIPAA guidelines that govern patient confidentiality and identifying patient factors, these kinds of things will be the rule of law. And even though it will help us, that will not change. There's no way that insurance companies will automatically have access unless there's permission given, and all the things that happen now. Those regulatory oversights will be necessary to be maintained for the immediate future, at least. I don't know why they would go away, to be fair.
JP, the Europeans on this webinar have stricter laws about that with GDPR, the General Data Protection Regulations, and I have to deal with that all the time with the journal. So they've got it even worse than we do.
We have it really bad. Really bad.
Nobody likes to be regulated. But, regulation is the way we do this safely. And, it's remarkable. I think how fast this is going. The reason I think this is going to scale largely in business is because business has responsibility to shareholders for profitability, and they also have responsibility to create value for the products that they want to sell. And at a time when many orthopedic products are being commoditized because there's not that big a difference between them, it will be the stickiness of the software that connects to them through AI and otherwise that will drive a lot of the attractiveness and, interest in using a particular product because of the software connected to the processes of the implant you will use.
But don't you think all these regulations are maybe a sign that we're losing a bit of grip of an understanding of what's happening to us? Because let's say a calculator, when it came out, everybody was afraid of it, but the algorithm can be broken down quite easily. But today, nobody knows how to break down the algorithm of ChatGPT or these kind of things. So maybe we're barricading ourselves behind all sorts of regulations because finally we're a bit lost somehow.
That's above my pay grade. You'd have to ask the engineers I hang around with. I can't tell you the answer to that.
It's whatever we use is just going to continue to get better. I analogy, if you remember a movie from the late 80s called Wall Street with Michael Douglas and Charlie Sheen, Michael Douglas was talking on the beach with like the prototype cell phone. It was about as big as my leg held up against his ear like this. And now we've all got these things that fit in the palm of your hand. And the same thing's going to happen with AI and ChatGPT and Bard and all the other things. They're just going to continue to improve and take over many things. Any automated task we do now, these things will do for us in the future.
Exactly.
Ricardo, sorry, John.
Yeah, I can do a little question. I think it's very interesting. In the future, we will see what happens. What about now, like the data check I mean, think about like a rotator cuff, massive rotator cuff. Each Congress, we saw different techniques with different solutions, different articles that say one thing, and then just 1 year after, an article say the opposite. Probably the literature on orthopedics is very low from a methodological point of view. And this could be like an exponential problem if we apply this with some AI, for example, or somebody that like doesn't know the practice of orthopedics. What do you think about it?
I'm not sure of the question in terms of distinguishing what's the best approach to something. Is that what you mean?
I mean, going to practice, if we rely on data that we cannot really trust. This is
so let me go back a little bit from that. And I think most people know who Mohit Bhandari, who is one of the world's experts on evidence-based medicine and orthopedics. And when he presented to our group, the Codman Shoulder Society, I remember him saying that about 75% of all the case cohort studies in level 4 are underpowered, and use the term fragility, meaning that if 1 or 2 patients' results change, the conclusion completely changes for the whole paper. The problem with most of the research that we have now is it's just simply not impactful because it doesn't have large enough numbers. ChatGPT can look through all of the articles and summarize or find the ones that are the best in terms of the number of cases and the methodology used and et cetera, and weight them as the ones that are more trustworthy relative to a question that's asked. That just for one example. It can also look, for example, we recently did a study looking at 740 rotator cuff surgeries and the cost of the devices used for the surgery. And at least in our institution, the cheapest to the most expensive was a factor of 6x. Well, AI can look at large data sets, even larger than that. And if the proper information is available, really do an analysis of the value being created by the surgeon relative to the cost of the implants being used, et cetera. That's going to be a real disruptor when we start to think about what should we be doing for our patients and how much should we be spending to do it if we really want to create value. To name just a few things it can do.
Yeah.
Well, I can certainly second this, but in the field of prediction, certainly AI is going to improve the way we do prediction. So we are moving, probably still doing a lot of regression modeling with our database, which in orthopedics are sometimes fairly small, particularly in the shoulder area. So that might change, but I think that the prediction is going to improve as long as the quality of the output of the input is going also to improve. So there is still a need that we put in place for the patients, ways to collect outcome that can be done in a very much automatic way and maybe in better quality. So we are moving towards patient outcome, reported outcome. We rely on patient opinions about their outcome. Maybe there is ways to put them wearables and then to collect a large amount of data that are going to just mimic or tell us more about the patient. And that's where AI can help us as well about the analysis of these data. But we do need to move towards small studies. I really also know Mohit Bhandari. We definitely need to move from small studies that are monocenter to much larger standardized documentation process on a larger scale, so national or international, but at least multi-center, definitely. Greg knows that as well.
Ricardo, do you have any questions from the audience to relay?
Yes, there is a question for JP Warner regarding EPIC. Exactly, I don't know what it is. EPIC. So in your hospital, there are currently established EPIC, and I heard several times that in the US, EPIC is used to automatically generate the medical notes by language recognition. It is true that in the US, some center are using this EPIC or not?
So EPIC is one of the many electronic medical record programs that are available. Cerner is another, there are others. And it may be the case in some places, but at the Mass General Brigham, at least in the world I live in orthopedics, sadly, EPIC is not doing that. I have to do all of that. So, you know, the future hopefully will be there. And actually, if you listen to chief information officers from around the country, including Mayo and other places, they are testing these things. They are working on it. They will be coming, and hopefully will help with what we call physician burnout in terms of the inordinate amount of time we have to spend documenting things and checking boxes and creating notes and signing them and all of that. So that is a real mission here to reduce the administrative burden that we as surgeons in the United States have to be compliant in terms of our patients' documentation and coding and et cetera. The other thing where it may play a big role is in coding. You know, what codes do we pick for different things that we do? I am certain that AI will play a significant role in automatically coding for procedures we do and reduce the time that we spend to do that.
JP, and to Michael, who asked the question, our group uses another EMR called Audige, which is actually based out of Watertown, JP. And Athena has voice recognition that you can use to generate your notes. And my group's used that for about 7 or 8 years now. And it's pretty good. It's not great. I mean, it's almost like AI requires a user oversight. You have to go back and check everything. But it does decrease the burden a little bit, so you're not checking boxes all the time.
You know, Bill, I mean, Dragon, which is voice recognition software, can be used in Epic. Many of my colleagues do that. I got tired of all the errors that it made, having to go back and constantly change it. So
yeah,
I have
there's some specific medical voice recognition systems other than Dragon, although Dragon has its own medical recognition system too. But you can embed them in the EMRs.
Right.
Great. Well, I think there's no more questions pending, right, Ricardo? And time is advancing quite surely. So I think we can conclude with this great webinar. I would like to thank you all for participating. Thanks a lot.
Another question, if you have time, I don't know.
I think you still have time for one more question, I guess.
Okay. There is one. This not the author is not mentioned. With the approach of that Prof. Bendari advocate, we may find what is the best treatment for the average patient. And how will this help to give the right treatment for the right patient? That's a very big question, probably. I don't know if someone want to answer.
I like to quote my good friend Christian Gerber, who said, if 2 people agree, one is not a surgeon. But you eliminate that when you have a non-biased entity reviewing the value of the available evidence and weighting that accordingly. Now, that of course would have to be tested, but so much of what is published is very affected by confirmation bias and is serving a purpose for the author who writes it, not serving the purpose of the patient. And I think that AI can be trained to weight something that weighs more the patient interest because of the evidence and the methodology used than something that is more opinion based. Even if it gets published, these things get published. So that's a broader question. Bill would be more an expert in that area because he's got to review all these articles. But I think that would be a wonderful application.
I'll second what JP said on confirmation bias. I think 90% of the level 4 articles that I get are just full of confirmation bias that the authors are just, I always say level 4 article to me means look how good I am, because they're always positive. You know, nobody ever publishes an article said I did 43 of these and 37 of them died and 6 of them, others are suing me. You just don't see those articles. So.
All right, so Bill, now that I know that your journal is not proofreading for AI, I'll just submit a quick a quick manuscript very soon, fully generated by AI, of course. Thanks, John, for this great insight and to broaden all the applications of AI to patient care, because at the end of the day, it's all that matters. Laurent, thanks a lot for your for sharing your experience as an author. I know it's a long journey, and we have to keep being vigilant and not give in to the song of AIs. So if I don't know if there's any more last comments. We can advertise here for the next SECEC webinar from the Education Committee, which will be about shoulder instability, the best Congress papers, which have been selected by the one called Functional Posterior Instability with Philippe Moroder, and the other one is about sling embolization after Latarjet by Patrick Gotti. So this is moderated by the Education Committee and the new chair that I want to congratulate, Gabor Skalitski from Hungary. So once again, thanks a lot for your participation, your time. It was a wonderful event. I think I've learned a lot, and I hope that everybody did as well. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank
Bye-bye.
you. Greg.
Thank you
very much.
you.
Bye.
Bye-bye.